Hello, everyone, and welcome to game number 3 of our 5th Casuals tournament. I'm Blues here with Urand, and we have a IO match this time.
We sure do. I'm really liking a certain set of resources in the Northeast. Everything is just so neatly together.
I would not be surprised to see a scientist drop there from Cat. It might be interesting also to work with a scavenger, potentially, with this high, very high, and this high. You have some nice aluminum nearby as well.
Wasn't exactly a spot thought that would go first, but I mean there's a lot of spots on this map that go really well with scientists.
Right, definitely a fine spot that Mr. X took. I think it's worse than the spot we were both looking at early. Kanto is not founding next to Silicon.
I don't know what he's doing.
Definitely confused by that. You can't really make Basalt work as Nomad.
I mean, you can try, but
Not try very successfully for the most part. So Cat going for this scientific spot as opposed to one further to the northwest of that. Guess they're about even. She should be just
I
fine.
think the advantage of this spot maybe is that there's a little bit more ice tiles, a little closer up.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
There is a bit less carbon, though, by which I mean
Bit
this is a
less
little more distant.
carbon, and you're in a lower elevation, so your ion collectors will be slightly worse, but neither is a big deal. Kanto going for early ice, trying to make money off of this $80 oxygen. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best move relative to maybe going to early ions, especially with chems so expensive. It would be nice to establish the field production.
Especially since Kanto does have that carbon that he needs to build the ion collectors.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Kanto is indeed trying to rely on Basalt as a dead. He's getting a very healthy 2.62 silicon a second, so about one very high quarry. So we'll see how that goes. This does hit HQ3 fairly quickly.
Yeah, but HQ3 is usually not the problem with these sorts of founds. It's HQ4 and 5 that's really the pain.
I guess the other thing you might think about with this is that space elevators don't take any silicon. Maybe just founding in this big field of strong aluminum, you can get something done with early space elevators. And oxygen launches are actually very strong already, so that is a potential play.
You still do need to get to HQ level 4 in order to build one, though.
Yes. I have nothing further to add than yes. So that is certainly going to be a problem. Pops in the single black magic chem refinery is weird to me. I guess maybe wanting to go into a lot of chems, but then deciding power is too important to ignore. I kind of wish that he had built more of these buildings on the basalt, though. Definite option for the steel and the nuclear. It'd be a lot more flexible later on.
Yeah, I think I'm probably okay with steel being an iron because you're not usually going to transition steel that often, at least not until late game. But nuclear plants maybe should have been built there.
Right, especially now that building on basalt doesn't actually take longer anymore. Just very little downside to it. So Kanto has successfully hit HQ4. Moving into water processors. Not really going for the lots of aluminum idea, which makes me a bit concerned about what his long-term play is going to be. He's muling silicon, which will help.
A scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Yeah, I think he has a very real. Although you know what? On the one hand, an early space elevator would be amazing. On the other hand, there are dynamites
And
available. There
slowdown
are
strikes.
yeah, and there are no holograms. So there's something to be said about not going for a very early space elevator slash off-world, because it's just so easy to attack. You want to get that price of the black market to a bit higher, so you
That
can
is
feel safer.
that is fair. I think a lot of me does just look at glass and electronics still being reasonably low. Even if you get blown up a few times, it's not the end of the world. I guess chems are very high, so going for early thinking machines might be a bit difficult. But some combination of plays along those lines would have been interesting. Probably hard to pull off, again, because of the chem price. I'm not making a ton of money on anything right now.
Now we are looking at a patent lab though for Konto. One at the colony actually. I'm wondering what he can do about it after he's done.
Right, I don't really see a great reason to build it at the colony. No one is really competing with you on that for the moment. I guess if a scientist decides to get into a patent lab, that could potentially save you enough time to be competitive with them. But even if you're going to build it at the colony, I'd rather just skip one of the bonuses and build next to the warehouses potentially.
Well, he is a nomad, so if someone does attack that patent lab and knock the goon out, he might. I don't know. Does it work that way? He
Yeah, if
should
the
be
goon
able
gets
to.
popped, he can return it.
Yeah, so he should be able to get that claim back. But it's an if, so people might not attack it. They might use a spicy. There's a goon on top of it and just slow down strike it.
Right, definitely a very real option. Other things to note, Mr. X moving into water processors next to his base, not using the scientific advantage fully, he could pretty easily put them on top of his existing ice or on top of other ice. He's going to want more than 2 ice tiles long term anyway.
The black market is open for business.
There's certainly a lot of ice to the south. You should probably also be looking for a patent lab and getting some teleportation or something.
No
Doesn't.
teleportation on Io.
Oh, right.
Unfortunately, it would solve so many problems so often.
I keep forgetting.
Pops
Well,
is in a patent lab. He hasn't started anything.
he probably needs that kind of aggressively, but he's still a full HQ behind everybody else, and I
Like
don't
going for
know.
nanotech right off the bat isn't going to be a huge boost. Something like transparent aluminum might be very interesting.
HQ has been upgraded.
For sure, yeah, that's probably the best bet you can have short term. Obviously, liquid batteries are always great. Well, too bad he's not seeing them this game.
Kanto should make pretty good use of that once the space elevators come up. Oxygen launch still climbing and climbing. That, meanwhile, is going for superconductor. Everyone's going for superconductor.
That's really good on IO.
Yeah, it's very good everywhere. Pops is going to be the one that ends up with it now.
Well, he has all those cool patents and he's also 2 GPUs behind. So I don't know what to make of that.
I guess an upside of being so far behind is that you're not going to get attacked. Mr. X decides to be the 4th player into a patent lab. At this point, I'm very concerned about being in a patent lab. It's unlikely that... Okay, he's switching it to an optimization center. That's more reasonable. When you're that late into the race and there's so many people racing, unlikely you get anything useful. Cat going for thinking machines, noticing probably this ridiculous space elevator. probably going to make very good money off world eventually.
Yep,
Also,
that's,
with lots of aluminum, transparent aluminum. This is the play I've wanted to see all game.
it's very clearly indicating to us what the plan is.
Yeah, it's also a very cat move, so no big surprise.
I would be kind of curious about Hacker Race this game. Like the last two, we've seen Hacker Race in the first two games, but I don't think they were amazing in either one. But in this game, there is something to be said about Silicon for Kanto.
Right. The only other person in Silicon right now is Cat with a single basalt platform. Yes, that's the word.
That's basically nothing.
Right, 0.5 a second. On the other hand, Kanto is also only relying on the 3 basalt, and he's in 2 glass, so he's also basically producing nothing.
Yeah, but it's an easy transition from glass into chems. For instance, he has a ton, and I mean a ton of carbon.
Right, it wouldn't be a difficult transition to make, and it would be a good transition to make. Because all the scientists can just push out as much glass as they want, probably, and it's not going to be a market that he cares too much to fight in long term. Mr. X actually doing quite well. I think a lot of that probably has to do with being in this glass. Not sure where else his edges might have come from. No, not glass.
Good production.
Chems. Yeah, just solid all around. I guess part of it's also that he hasn't been spending all this money on patents. So he's been able to just optimize and, well, start getting the space elevator up. Which is ungooned, unfortunately.
And I hate that. Absolutely, because... And also he's building a hacker in a spot that that should be visible to any potential spies.
Mm-hmm.
If they are not misplaced.
Right, because once you place the spy in the middle tile to check on the elevator, you get a free bonus hacker, right? And Mr. X really needs to either buy a goon or start buying these dynamites to make them more expensive.
That was
The
beautiful.
I'm not
It's
sure.
still not great though.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure Pops really wants to be involving himself with that sort of thing. I mean, Mr. X isn't significantly far ahead in any meaningful way. He's essentially tied with Kanto, although he is the scientist. But Kanto does have the really strong patents. Liquid batteries in particular. So it could go either way.
I'm a little bit surprised that Cat is still not making a move into space elevator, because unlike Mr. X, she does not have to worry so much about the cheap dynamites because of the thinking machines.
Right, I definitely expected more of a move in that direction. I'm not really sure what happened instead. I mean, she could have pretty easily dropped the 3rd aluminum tile if she wanted. She is buying up aluminum now, and that will help. But she could have had more. And she did upgrade after taking transparent aluminum, so that's something she could have planned for. Right, going to the space elevator finally, but now she's down to 1 aluminum tile. It's going to make it even harder to get the 2nd elevator down.
Kanto moving out of the basalt platforms and actually getting 3 low elemental quarries on Silicon.
Maybe finally realizing that that wasn't really sustainable. I mean, he does have 1,000 iron and well, 400 uranium almost.
He can. Yeah, I'm lacking the hackery play potential for Kanto. He has the raw silicon. He has just an insane amount of iron. It's probably enough iron for at least 3 hacks.
Our methods continue to
Although Cat also sitting on almost 500 iron, so that's probably going to end poorly if he tries that.
That's a good point.
Kanto is actually muling aluminum. Going to be looking to get into the elevators. Going to be a bit late to the party. But again, with his liquid batteries, he should be able to sustain the launches better than almost anyone else.
available for option.
It's late, but I don't think it's too late yet.
Right, no one's running away with things quite yet, so he can still fight his way back in. I do wonder if he really needed to go into the full triangle of silicon. He's already at this 1000. It's not something he's going to need a ton more of going forward.
So,
He's not really going to be
Yeah.
transitioning all that much.
He has spent all of his claim returns at this point, so he's stuck with that. He can always put something else there, but it's not going to be a great play, I don't think.
Right? At the very least, he still has
the black market
enough
will
claims to
apply.
go for this extra aluminum again. That should get him to 2 elevators reasonably quickly if he
The black
stops
market is
selling all his aluminum.
Did you think it would be so easy to hook
Apparently he
up
wanted to
optimization
dynamite
tools
Mr. X's
successfully?
elevator enough.
I'm a little bit concerned for Popsier Socks. He's the only one who's not making
The
any
engineers
efforts
advanced our
to
production.
get an elevator quite yet. Any real efforts anyway. And he's the one who's actually getting aggressive against Cat, who's
Right, I don't.
probably in one of the best positions in the game. And
Right, I really don't see where his edge is over Cat.
I guess he might be trying to do the like look at the scientist with thinking machines, let's all attack her thing. But the other
Doesn't
scientist
seem-
has like double her cash, or a little less at this point.
Right, I think what this mostly ends up accomplishing is making Mr. X feel very safe to attack Kanto.
Unfortunately, Mr. X has to rebuild his space elevator. Is she now gooned for 50k, I assume?
Yeah, that seems right.
Thankfully, the dynamites are getting pricier, so it's going to get harder to actually strike through that. Especially
Right
since
there.
there are no goon poppers.
Mhm. Which was also just one of the big reasons why an earlier elevator was somewhat tempting. I mean, Dynamite acted as goon poppers early on.
Perhaps a lesson
Well,
is in
he
order.
did buy a 70k goon, so he's no super safe, but I feel like he just wasted his advantage.
Right,
Our methods
I don't
continue to
buy that
improve.
being worthwhile.
And the spies are 14k, so there's really no excuse for wasting dynamite on the space elevator. If you do absolutely want to pop that goon, you should probably do it with a power surge.
Space elevator delivery. So
I
much
guess
money.
it doesn't feel comfortable doing that ever. I never really noticed that Cat's elevator was not actually making
Yeah.
use of thinking machines.
That's it's a very
I kind of just
questionable decision.
assumed. I guess she placed it there because there's a goon there, but again, if you're already displacing the aluminum, which you probably didn't want to do anyway, it makes even less sense. I really have to question what she did with her HQ5 claims. But it's okay. Mr. X and Kanto starting to get into their fight. Mr. X very solidly ahead, despite the 70k goon and everything else.
I'd like to point out that Kanto's patent lab has been sitting there this whole time. He did get a whole bunch of extra patents. But yeah.
Is Geo Borehole doing literally anything for him?
Yes. It's making him a little extra power on the one geotherm that he has.
I did not catch that, yes. 0.2 power.
Well, it's upgraded, so it's even a little more. 0.25.
I'm also not sure what Slant Drilling's doing for him. I guess it's getting him extra uranium, which is actually not a bad thing. It's solid.
I think he only had 2 patents for the longest time, then he realized, wait, I have this patent lab, what's left?
How could one refuse
I'll take
such a
anything.
valuable plot of land?
Financial instruments just not gonna get a whole lot done this game. Mr. X actually using a lot of Cook the Books. Did not realize he was in 126k of debt with this nice AAA rating.
That would explain why his stock price was so much lower than everyone else's.
Right, Cat also making use of Cook the Books, but to a lesser extent.
Congratulations. Elevator going up.
So maybe financial instruments made some sense when Kanto took it.
Yeah, well then it's kind of commendable that he did, I guess.
Although it's still not commendable that the patent lab is still there. Could be another optimization center, could be a pleasure dome, could be a hacker array, could be an elevator, heck.
This could be literally anything else. Could be a single chem refinery, that would be better.
That it would. A single steel mill.
So,
Kanto can't afford to go into steel this game. That huge stockpile of iron he built up.
the engineers have advanced our production.
Speaking of which, why is the steel price so high? Is no one... All the scientists just decided they weren't interested.
Our methods continue to improve.
Mr. X in particular should transition some of this glass back into steel.
Optimization routines successful.
Yeah, glass is still good, even though it's a somewhat fake price because of Cat's stockpile, but yeah, a bunch of people have stockpiles. So.
Right. It's definitely a mistake for Mr. X, A, to keep producing so much glass, and B, to keep going for perfect glass production. The market is just not that strong.
Yeah, I think at this point, since he doesn't know about Cat stockpile, what you do is just transition one
Price
tile.
manipulations to
That
begin
could be enough.
shortly.
Right.
And also
just-
optimize steel.
Yes, very much. Also, probably a mistake not to have optimized oxygen sooner. I mean, the oxygen price ended up staying fairly stable, but it would have been a very nice thing to keep his launches more sustainable. Mr. X, though, is noticing that he has the buy on Kanto, starting to cancel out of a lot of things, but doesn't want to cancel out of the launch. Apparently, he does want to cancel out of the launch. Which
And
I'm
there we
not
go.
sure was the right idea. I mean, this is a plus 70k launch, which is just insane. But yeah, still in a very, very nice position now with the full sub. I think if he can get down a second elevator fairly soon, he should just be completely set to win this game without really any opposition. Because Cat and Pops are still just locked in this battle, and it will be a fair bit longer until Cat can clean this up. I guess once the launch is done, she's pretty close.
Yeah, Cat kind of just wasted a little bit too much time, I feel like.
Right? Not making good use of the thinking machines, not getting enough aluminum production down once she got the transparent aluminum thinking machines combo off. It's really not a super coherent game plan, I feel like. And Pops just poked a player that he could not beat.
Well, he's looking kind of okayish, but yeah, he attacked way too early.
Right, he was behind most of the game. He made a valiant effort trying to get back into things, but it just wasn't happening. Maybe if he bided his time longer, but got aggressive, too aggressive.
Mr. X actually building a second? Oh no, he cancelled out. Okay.
The black market is online. The engineers have
Cat
advanced
is
our
building a
production.
second space elevator, though.
Where? I would like to know.
I have no idea. I just know it's getting built.
Under another goon. He's still not using that thingy machine's bonus.
Yeah, not ideal.
Although at this point, well, actually no. No, the black market is expensive. It doesn't matter too much at this point.
Your XY. I mean, the 50k dynamite actually still make a ton of sense. Losing that
Yep.
whole 80k launch. How often do you see launches this ridiculous?
Not very often. And this is only, oh, I guess it's IO, so Sol 6 is actually somewhat late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we're closing in on Sol 10-ish Mars time. Or further than that, actually. Yeah, further than that. Mr. X is hacking glass? Or is that just a natural shortage? No, he's been chain hacking glass. Okay.
I am very not happy about that.
Doesn't seem to have backfired too hard. But it is interesting.
Yeah, I guess actually no one is producing glass at the moment. So I guess I'm not so unhappy about that.
Profits rising.
In fact, glass was kind of crushed, so it made sense for people to move out. So yeah, it's a reasonable idea.
Mm-hmm. I still feel like he maybe could have made more money with a third steel mill, but it's not the worst thing.
Oh yeah, I mean you can still hack glass on just two glass furnaces, glass kilns, if you have that perfect optimization.
Yep. One thing we are seeing right now is that Mr. X's stock price is suffering majorly. He has $280,000 of debt. Cook the books are a really good tool to keep your debt under control, but you still need to do something about it because a steady interest kick when you have that much debt, not great. And I think that mismanagement is probably going to be enough to keep him from winning the game. He was very close.
Yeah, Cat is now shipping off of two. Well, actually one is blown up again, so I guess it's still one.
Right. Pops
She only
is the
needs
more...
so little money still.
Yeah. Definitely looked like Mr. X was in a really good position to win the game once he got the buy off on Kanto. Just really didn't do enough to finish things off from that point. Getting a second elevator might have been a thing. Paying off a bunch of debt would definitely have been a thing. Buying into... well, I guess he couldn't really have bought into CAD sooner. But there were definite options. And I think he definitely let this one slip away a bit.
Yeah, that's sad. I think he probably did need to build a second space elevator.
Right, you just can't not when prices are like this. Even with how ridiculously expensive it was, it would have only taken roughly 2 launches to cover. It's just a bit of a shame.
Yeah, so Cat is pulling that win, kind of
That is.
surprisingly.
I am a bit disappointed in Cat this game, though. I expect better. The plays around aluminum and thinking machines could have been executed differently. And if they were, I think she would have really been in a commanding position instead of kind of being just good enough to take advantage of some missteps from Mr. X.
I think we should take her win away, because it's not up to your standards.
You can't do that sort of thing, because I'd end up taking all my own wins away. Apparently, Kat did not realize she got TM. I guess that explains some things.
Well then.
I don't know.
Just like the idea of a company owner who's like, did we get some patents? Yes, we did. Okay, cool. I don't even know what we got.
It doesn't matter what we got, it just matters that we got it.